The following presentation is made possible in part by support from Quebec Government House in New York. Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today it's our pleasure to present the 1984 film from Quebec, La Femme de l'Hôtel, or as it's translated in English, Woman in Transit. This is very much a woman's film. It's about three women, a film director, an actress, and a woman who may serve as an inspiration for their work on a film. It's a multiple award winner from Canada, and it is part of the whole group of very interesting films made by women from around the world in the 1980s. We'll be talking about those issues and others after today's screening, when it's our great pleasure to welcome here the director and writer of the film, Léa Pool. Now, enjoy La Femme de l'Hôtel. Welcome back to City Cinematheque. I hope you've enjoyed what I think is this extraordinary opportunity to see a very distinguished film from the 1980s, La Femme de l'Hôtel, Woman in Transit. And who better to have today as a guest than the screenwriter and director of the film, Léa Pool. Léa, welcome to City Cinematheque. A pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Let's talk. This is not a recent film for you.
No.
This was only the second of your feature films.
It's the first, because I made Strass Café before, but it was a medium length film, black and white, and with a real crew and with a real budget. It's the first. It was my first feature. Yeah.
Good. And how? Let's just start with the simplest of all things. Where did this film begin? That is, when did you start thinking about this script? How did that script develop? Then we'll find out how it got made.
I remember that I wanted to make a film about a woman that is nowhere. That means she's coming from one place and going to another place, but we take her in the moment of her life when she doesn't know where she is and what she wants in her life. And I remember I was reading Baudelaire poem at this period, and there was three titles of poem that was very important for me when I was beginning thinking of the project. One of the title was À une passante in French, that means to a passerby. Another title was Anywhere Out of the World. And the third one, it's a long time, Chacun sa chimère, anyone has his own dream. And as a first film, of course, it's a lot of, also for, my last film is very autobiographical, but this one also because there is this Femme de l'Hôtel, but there is also this director, female director, and Andrea Richler. And I wanted to make, with three women of the same age, one person, like the three parts of the same person. One is the more conscious part of the person. It's the director who think of, with the one who think of the film, and there is the unconscious part of the person. This is La Femme de l'Hôtel. We don't know anything special about her, and the actress in between make the link between the conscious and the unconsciousness of the two others. And the three together make one character. This was the défi, what I wanted to try to do. Yeah. So this was the very beginning, but also it was a period when the film Francis Farmer was going out, and also there was a singer in Montreal that had a very strange story that was in a hospital, had a lobotomia. And I was very impressed by all these stories, and but I didn't want to make a film of adventure. I just wanted to keep this in mind, to try to express somebody that is in distress and how she goes through this period of her life.
Well, did you? How long did it take you to develop the script, and then how, by what means, did the script become a movie? Was this privately financed? Was it financed partially with state support? Because there are different traditions in the United States and in Canada and in Europe, of course, for the ways in which projects of this scale get made. Since this is what we would today call, people would group this as an independent film.
Yeah,
okay.
It is an independent film, but you know, in Canada, all films are independent. There is not a system like an Hollywood system in Canada. So you got money from almost all the film. The money is raised by the government. It's state money. It's Canada money. It's Telefilm Canada and Quebec money. This time it was. I don't remember now. It's La Sodec. It's a Quebec founding, and you need a TV to raise the money too. It was a small budget, I remember. If I remember, I wasn't paid for this film at all. I gave all my money in. I'm still be paid for the film now, because it was done with if I remember, 300,000 Canadian dollars. So it meant 200,000. It was very, very small budget, and it was shot in 16 millimeters and blew up in 35. So it took 1 year to write the script, and after it was, I wrote the script perhaps in 81, 82, and after to raise the money, because it was my first feature, it takes a little bit time too, and it was a very unconventional way of telling a story too, because it's not so narrative, it's more poetic way, and I was more inspired by poem than by a novel, for example. I was interested to try to express, or to do something in a film that is not just telling a story, that is more a mood or an atmosphere and emotions, and more like music or painting or poem than like a novel.
Well, may I ask? There is a tradition of doing that, and I think this film is a very strong, example of that tradition. I think some people who may not know your work, I hope they get to know your work through this. And by the way, we'll talk about this a little bit later. Your new film that's in release in the United States, Set Me Free. But this whole notion of drifting away from narrative and being interested in something else. This is something that's been quite notable in, for example, the novels of Virginia Woolf, or the work in French of Nathalie Sarraute, or of Marguerite Duras, and of course Duras herself is a distinguished filmmaker. So while this is a film, made in the Americas, I associate it much more with a tradition of films that are looking at the inside of characters and how they're feeling and experiencing events.
It's true. First of all, I'm from a European background. I'm from Switzerland. I live in Quebec now. It's more than 20 years that I live in Quebec, but I'm not North American from background. And all the films I have seen when I was younger was more French or Russians or Bergman's film. And when you say Duras, for example, for me, trying to begin to make films and having the courage to begin to be a filmmaker was a lot to do with this kind of film, because I never thought of being a filmmaker that made a narrative film. I was more experimental at the beginning. Of course, during the year and building my career, and you are more conscious also of the audience, and I don't think I make I made a lot of compromise in all my films, but still, I think I'm more open to a larger audience in my last films. That doesn't mean that it's a big story behind each film, but it's what I can say. Perhaps it's the spectrum of emotions is larger.
Right.
And the very beginning of my career, I was like this too. I was very not black, but it was life was tougher than it is now. You know? And, yeah. So I can remember that, and it was. I take filmmaking very seriously. You know, it has to be very deep and very, and of course I still love this film, but I can see that. Of course, I changed. It's almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this film and Montreal, because I find this film has a view of Montreal, or more accurately, the kind of relationship between the place and the characters. You know, that's certainly different. To take an absurd example from, you know, the kind of uses in action films of locations that the location is there to provide certain kinds of stunts or whatever, or in another way, in those kinds of films where it's not stunts, but it's the location is there to be shown off. Oh, please come to our place. You and your children will love to vacation here. Something like that. But this is a film where the intimacy of the character's situation is very closely bound with the spaces they inhabit. It's a very space-conscious film.
Thank you. I appreciate that you can see this, because of course in all my films I think the location is, for me, it's one character. It's not a character. It's the inside part of the characters that that are in my films. And in all my films, I think I try to find places and atmosphere that look as it's an inside the landscape of the characters, and because it's very difficult to paint the feelings. You can, and I don't like films that tell the feelings.
Right.
I sometimes it's okay, but I prefer to express it. I think this is part of creation, to try to find a way to express. Music can do it very well. The combination between images and music can. But it's also dangerous because sometimes it's just souligner, you know, it's just give too much emphasis on an emotion. But the landscape never. It's just it's a big part of my work is looking for the good place to shoot the film and to give the good information for the audience and for what I try to say.
Well, and for me, one of the pleasures of watching this film is that because the characters are not articulate about some of their feelings, not because they're unintelligent, or not because, in this case, because they're people who do not have, say, the intellectual skills to be emotional, but because your very subject matter is two things: either states of confusion, or that they are having a certain set of feelings that precede the ability to articulate what it is. One can sense many things. One can have very deep, profound, confused, whatever feelings, and that's not right for the moment in which you speak to yourself as a soliloquy or you argue with people about it, because it's not so defined. And I find the spaces in this film function in that way.
Yeah, it's true. When you are in a crisis, it's never the time to express what you try to express, but usually you just, in French you say you radote. You just say always the same thing. Everybody has a friend or has been in the situation where you just say always the same thing because you are completely obsessed by something, because you are in a crisis and nothing else exists. But you cannot have a distance between what you are, your feelings, and what you have to say about these feelings. And I think it's what I don't like in a lot of films, that they express au fur et à mesure, just at the same moment they are experiencing something, right. They are expressing. And in real life, it's never like this, you know. You never you feel uncomfortable, you feel sad, but you don't know why you feel like this, and it's more confusion in real life than in movies, I think. And
well, I would like to say that works not only in this particular film we've seen. Not only does it work in terms of explaining the psychology of the characters, and whether it be the actress, the director, or the woman in the hotel, but this is a film with a very intricate narrative structure. So one of the things that I appreciate about the film is the way in which you position or you play with us, the spectators, so that we think we're entering a scene from a particular perspective. We think that we are seeing the actress, and then we are actually seeing the woman from the hotel. Or we see actions that are initially inexplicable. We don't understand exactly where we are, or we don't exactly understand the motivation for the action. And so we are put in this same state by the film of oh, I'm disoriented here. What exactly is it that's going on? And
yeah, because it's not only a film about the feelings and confusion in a crisis, but it's also a film about creation. And if you are in the state of the director who is trying to make this film and has difficulty to do the film, I think you are also in this state of confusion. It's not only a confusion of emotion from a situation of love, or it's also a confusion of creation. And I think it's very close confusions. And I like to play on these two levels together, because when you create something, it's always you go home, for example, after a day of shooting, and the day doesn't finish the minute you go in the kitchen, you know, and prepare the dinner for your daughter. It's completely
intermingled.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, so that's let's talk about the character of the director for a moment. I'm sure everybody wants to. I'm sure many people have asked this question before. You might even be tired of the question, but don't worry, I'm going to ask it anyway. To what degree, since you are a film director, and here is a film director in the film, how do you see that character in relationship to you?
When I made the film, I think the actress who played the director take a lot. She was she told me after the shooting, but she said that she observed me a lot to take elements of my own direction and my own work, because as a director I couldn't look at me as a director at this time, because I was just beginning to make films. So I was not saying it's me the director, but of course I knew that there was some elements of my own life in her character, but not as a director, more as a person. Or for example, the relationship between the director and her brother that we can find in Set Me Free 2. There is like incestuous, how would you say? Not incestuous?
Yes.
A little bit. It's just a small incestuous relation, but it's something that was already there. And when La Femme de l'Hôtel said to Andrea Richler, "Are you Jewish?" Listening to the name, it's something that came after in my other film, because I have a Jewish part in my father is Jewish, and it's something that is important in my own identity. So there are small things, but I cannot say that it's very. In this was not so. The only autobiographical point is that I wanted to be a director, and she was a director, but I couldn't identify myself to a director because it was almost my first film.
Right. Well, now this you made Strasse Café, which was a medium-length film. Then this, and then you made a film after this that constitute a kind of trilogy. Is that?
Un Triste.
Yes. And let's talk about where you've gone since then, and particularly where where you are now. It might be useful for us to tell the audience that, to repeat that you have another film. I mean, you've made a number of films in between. You have not been, at home making dinner for your daughter every night. And your new film, Set Me Free, Importez-moi, is released here in the United States in the year 2000 and has received, a very, very warm critical reception wherever it's been. It's a film that's about a young girl's coming of age with immigrant parents in Montreal in the 1960s. How obviously these two films have different stories. They're also made more than about 15 years apart. How do you see yourself as a filmmaker now in making this Importez-moi, Set Me Free?
I feel more free. Yeah, it's true. I told you before that being a film director and making film was something very serious when I made La Femme de l'Hôtel, and I wanted to be good, and I wanted to prove to others that I could be a director. And of course, after 5 or 6, I think it's my 6th feature film, Set Me Free, and I made documentary in between. That helps me a lot, I'm sure. It gave me I made my film with more. How can I say this? With more pleasure, with more. It's not so important. Or not all my life is. Of course, it's still very important to make films, but I know that there are other things in my life that are important, and I have not to prove myself anymore that I can do. I know that I can do. I can do. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's not so good. But I still have now a few films behind me. So, and. So I do Set Me Free with much more freedom, and I think this helped, what I told you also before, to have a larger spectrum of emotion, from laughing to crying, from scenes that can be more superficial, scenes that can be more deep. It's not one. It's not all in one block. It's something that is more, and this I'm happy of this, because I think it will give me more opportunity also for other films, and it touch a larger audience. I'm sure this is it open up a little bit.
Well, and film culture, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, doesn't stand still. I mean, one never expects, not only are you a different person 15 years later with the same basis and all of that, but changed by experience, but so the industry, the public itself has changed. I should point out that in your new film, Set Me Free, the young girl goes to see Vivre sa vie by Jean-Luc Godard. You and I could doubtless talk about when we in the 60s first saw Godard and what it meant to us, because it's directly a part of our adolescence, whereas that is not for many people who would see Set Me Free. It's I hate to say this, it's an historical example.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, didn't mean that.
No, it's true.
And so you are recreating a particular age. And I should say that if people liked the sense of detail about environment and about the visual context of the story in La Femme de l'Hôtel, they should certainly be seeking Set Me Free, because your sense of the recreation, again, in a non-touristic manner, because this is a working class family, so the sense of what it is to be living in certain neighborhoods in Montreal almost 40 years ago gives a very strong sense of the nature of the character's life as well. One other question, which is that I'm sure many people have asked before, and you might have different answers to at different times of your life. You've talked about the challenge of becoming a filmmaker. That's a challenge for anyone who makes that decision. But I think it's also true that it's a particular set of challenges for a woman when she makes that decision. Could you tell us, if you happen to agree with me, could you talk about that a little bit?
When I began to make films, I didn't find it was such a challenge to be a woman, because I was very Sure that it's coming and that women will be part of the film business because it was a good period. It was the end of the 70s and there was German women filmmaker, there were French women filmmaker, there were a lot of Canadian filmmaker. But 15 years later, I'm a little bit disappointed because I think it's not true. And a lot of filmmakers that begin in the same time, they made 1-2 films, and after they go to TV or make a documentary, and they don't continue to make films. And I don't know what happened exactly, but I know that it was a beginning of something and it stopped. And we are far, far away from equality between men and women in this business, because being in different festivals all around the world with my film, usually, speaking of Cannes, Venice or Berlin, for example,
right.
Even New York, even if in New York I think it's a little bit better, but there was, if there is 25 films in competition, in this kind of competition, 2 or 3 are made by women. And of course it's not normal, and it's not because we are worse than the man. It must be something wrong someplace. It's not possible. And looking at with books, for example, now in bookstores, you can really find, I'm sure if we look at it, almost half-half
right.
women writer and men writer. But not in films, not at all. I think in production, as a producer, a lot of women begin to be producer. For example, in Montreal, there are a lot of women producers. But directors, it's still, I hope it will change.
Okay, well, we're going to have to end there on a note of hope, and with the recommendation that if people want to see your work of today, they should check out Set Me Free. If you'd like more information about City Cinematheque or about this series, please drop us a line. Drop it to City Cinematheque, City University Television, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. Let me give you that information again. Drop us a card to City Cinematheque, City University Television, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016. Léa, it's a pleasure to have you here to look at your past and to talk about your present. I hope you come back and join us sometime.
Thank you very much.
Great. And I hope that you come back and join us once again watching City Cinematheque. Thanks for joining us today. The preceding presentation of City Cinematheque was made possible in part by support from Quebec Government House in New York.